All right, everybody, welcome to the show. Today's podcast is titled Hacking Your Neurology. So I think what we're going to learn today is different ways of getting inside your nervous system and getting the maximum out of yourself. Everything from hormones to the proper biochemistry. There's a lot of things in how we posture ourselves, how we breathe, how we think, the questions we ask ourselves, all these great things that we want to talk about today. And today's guest, he's been on the show before. You love him. Yeah, you love him. I mean, you can't not. And he is, like I tell people, if you're going to watch this podcast, get your headgear on, asbestos suit, stand back a couple more inches from the screen because this man has opinions. He's a 300-pound power lifter, neurologist, chiropractor with a diplomat in neurology, teaches neurology, drives everybody crazy. We love him. So welcome back to the show, Dr. Fred Clary. How are you, sir?
I'm doing fantastic. The sun is out. I don't think it's supposed to snow today.
All right.
So I'm out here in Minnesota. We're loving life. Any day above 32 degrees, you put on shorts.
Yeah, yeah. You get a little more sun than us here in Buffalo.
Yeah,
we get a little more warmth. It's a trade-off.
You got the snow this winter. You got the snow.
God, you can't even imagine. I mean, we got snow literally up to our bellies. People couldn't walk down the street they couldn't get to their mailboxes. They couldn't walk down the street. I mean, you had snowshoes maybe. I mean, I never saw anything like that in my life. I was actually in Minnesota when it happened.
Okay.
How weird is that? And then I flew back and had to dig the car out of the airport, which was crazy.
Yeah.
I flew to Cleveland, then drove from Cleveland, got my shovel, dug it out, returned the rental car, got to my driveway. Thank God a good buddy of mine cleaned my driveway out, or I would have had to bring all my suitcases from my Christmas trip up the driveway. And at that point, there's a little melt, but it still would have been mid-thigh snow. It was an epic storm. It was a blizzard of 2022. I lived through the blizzard of 77. I was a little kid. But blizzard of 2022, I mean, worse, they say, depending. There's opinions. People like to argue it out. They were a little different, but they were hideous, So, we tough it out, though. Buffalo's an amazing city for that. We got, lifts and snow removal stuff that nobody has. Because, we get that lake, it dumps it, and it's over. Forget about it. You're just going to have to just know how to do it. It's kind of like an Eskimo/Viking kind of experience, I don't mind it. I ski. I can make an igloo if I have to. I'm good with snowmen, snow angels. You just do all the stuff to entertain yourself. Just make sure the elderly have heat and their furnace vents are open, check with people.
That's amazing. You guys adapt, which is the function of the nervous system. So if we drop that same population in Miami, I'm sure they would adapt to that too. Now, how can that be?
Right. Humans have survived through adaptation over thousands and thousands of years, right? Omnivores. That's how I think of it. People think we're vegetarians, we're carnivores, we're this and that. I know if you look at the whole picture, you may or may not agree with me. I never asked you this directly. I think we're omnivores. And why are we omnivores? That's how we survive. We didn't survive from running faster than cheetahs. We didn't survive from, blending in with the environment like some animals can do. I think we were able to eat a whole bunch of different stuff, create the tools and the weapons and make it work and look at all the environments.
Well, last time I looked, it says this is a canine tooth. Canines for tearing flesh. So when I wake up in the morning and my canines are now just really flat, thick, large for crunching up, grain. Nah. As long as I got a canine for tearing flesh, I'm going to tear flesh. Okay. And we could do a whole podcast on the plant-based diet. And now it's a big movement, and all the side effects, diseases, and pathophysiology I'm seeing in real humans in my office from this lifestyle. So
when you look at how the body's been reshaped, formed, and fallen apart because we're doing or not doing the right stuff as a natural health doctor, it's pretty amazing, and getting people's behavior to follow that. First the belief, get them to explain it, get them to start to follow the behavior, and then people get incredibly healthy. It's amazing because that's what I've done. I grew up with the white bread and sugared cereals and pasta. and occasional meatballs and stuff like that. And then, a lot of processed food. It was a miracle, right? They preserved it and they made it easier to chew, and it looks whiter or more colorful, and everything's great. Your Lucky Charms are bright and shiny, and they taste fantastic. And then you wonder why, you can't focus and you got a belly sticking out, you got all these things wrong with you. What's with the allergies? Why is my nose running? I got sinus problems. It's got it from my mother. It's genetic. No.
Why is my heart glued up? Why does my heart want to stop beating? It's tired of being abused.
Yeah. I can't take anymore.
I can't take anymore. You keep feeding me this stuff. I'm done. You don't deserve to pass on your genes. You know,
not eating. A lot of people are no longer eating food. They're eating food-like chemical substitutes. So people know processed food's bad, but what do you eat? And that's a whole nother crazy topic. But
you ever done the McDonald's hamburger test?
No, what's that?
So go get a McDonald's hamburger, just a regular, $1 hamburger. Take a bite. Do not chew it. Use your tongue and just leave it in your mouth for about 10, 20 seconds. The meat, the bread start to dissolve. They have processed the meat to the point that we don't even have to work tearing it down so we can digest it. That's why a lot of this stuff, I'm like, and it's like, wait a minute, is this real meat? Because it's melting in my mouth. This is not okay.
It's popsicles, actually.
It's a meat popsicle.
It's the frosting while you chew on it or whatever you're doing. Yeah, that's pretty sad. No, I didn't know that. I guess it makes it easier for people,
Yeah, it does. And it makes it more addictive, because if you look how our brains are wired for efficiency. So, we have this brain, and it's, about 3 pounds of jelly floating in Gatorade between our ears. And it's wired for efficiency of use of all its resources: energy, glucose, neurotransmitters, little hormones that make things move around well and control its function. And our brain, this biological tissue that is wired for efficient economical use of all resources, created a mind. That mind is a construct of everything going around you, like how I see you. We were telling jokes today, about how crazy the pandemic was. And all that is a creation of my mind, which is looking for continuity and efficiency. So that's why we hang out with people of like, that's why, this is my tribe. These people are politically, religiously, they all agree with. It's more comfortable to move toward that. And that efficiency, we're always looking for things that line up with our views. My wife has a Jeep Trailhawk. Never saw that type of Jeep before until she wanted it. Never saw it anywhere. I'm like, okay, this is unique. As soon as we bought that one, you know what I see all the time on the road? Jeep Trailhawks. All the time. And that just tells us how our brain is filtering constantly. We're constantly filtering things. It takes a while to set up that filter and to drive that mind to see those things. So if, say, your mom gives you a McDonald's hamburger and it melts in your mouth and it works that day for that moment. Wow, I got some calories in. I'm doing okay. Your mind is going to say, hey, that's good. It worked. You didn't fall over dead. Nothing bad happened. Do it again. Second time you do it again. And pretty soon that becomes the rule, the construct, the program. If we're talking about computers, that becomes the rule for your life, that McDonald's hamburgers are good. And then, say 20, 30 years later, you're having all these health problems. How the heck are you going to reverse that? Because you're just not fighting the high cholesterol, your heart wanting to stop, your kidneys breaking down. You're also fighting the mind, the construct that you created with your own. How do we hack that? Well, there is ways, but that's what I want people to see, is that the battle is not against the hamburger. The battle is not against the bad diet. The battle is not against your nagging significant other that wants you to lose a couple pounds to get more moving more. It has nothing to do with that. It has to do with evolutionary biology that set it up that once something works, you do it again. If this is the way I avoided the saber-toothed tiger, I'll do it again. I lived. do it again. Oh, I lived, do it again. And you even pass that trait on to people. I mean, can you believe that? It's so that's the efficiency of how our brain and our mind are. Well, that controls everything. Your hormones, your digestion, your behaviors, the operation of every one of your cells is controlled by that construct. Give you an example. You were talking about how buffalo. Wow, buffalo is, your hardy people. Well, let's talk about, the Inuit Eskimos up near the North Pole where Santa Claus is. Well, guess what? They've been there for so long, they don't eat any carbohydrates because you ain't going to find none unless you go to McDonald's, right? And there ain't no McDonald's up there. So what do they eat? Pure whale blubber, seal blubber. And over time, the brain said this works. We'll give information to our organs and say, you need to produce some more fat digesting enzymes. And guess what? They did. They also had a construct of their society that supported living, in the tundra. That goes to the same people on the equator. Oh, it's Christmas. It's 102 degrees. What can I have? Oh, I can have this banana. If you look at some of the hunter-gatherer tribes that still are around the equator, they do a lot of carbohydrates, but there's no diabetes because the construct is just not moving all the time. They only eat as much as they need at that moment of those carbohydrates. And they have the enzyme systems because for their mind, this is healthy. So I think a lot of the times we have to sit back and look at how is our mind, affected in health, in disease. What's the hack to our life? Is the hack a vitamin? Is the hack, I need to balance my hormones, so I'm going to put some estrogen cream on my wrist? Maybe. Or is the hack your whole philosophy? They use the word paradigm. And for people out there listening or watching, it just means how you view the world, your worldview.
Sure.
And when people say worldview, I kind of laugh because, my worldview. And I go, okay, tell me about the Byzantine Empire. And of course, they look at me, huh? Well, you don't have a worldview. You don't understand the world. Your worldview is usually the four walls you live in. It's usually your house, your neighborhood, maybe your state, if you went to the state championships. But most people live in a Hoosiers moment. Remember that movie Hoosiers about high school basketball in Indiana? Small town, Indiana high school made it to the big state championships in Indianapolis. They'd never been to a town over 5,000. And they get in there and they see a stadium that holds 50,000. And then the coach went up and measured the hoop. Hey, look, 10 feet, just like back home, But that's the whole thing we have to see is that we really do live in our own boxes. We put on blinders. We filter out all information. And the filters we do have go through this limited, tiny, tiny view, very small view of only what you know and what your personal experiences are.
What you think works. And years ago, you and I talked about, not having a job, sort of having a mission, right? And having a career and a life that isn't just, the drudgery of get up and make the donuts. It was a passionate
calling.
Exactly. A calling to complete your mission. And one of the things that we talked about is becoming bigger than we are. And who we were was our parents, teachers, and peers.
Yes.
And I never forgot that because I thought that's true. What else would form us away? And the friends we have, the parental influence, and then the teachers who are around, right?
Right. Or the media. Look what it is today. It's the media, right? It's these things.
Yeah, if you sit in front of that long enough.
Yeah.
Right. You get into that.
We're getting all these impressions, Doc, of what health is. I mean, I've had at times 4 or 5 daughters at home, and the outside world, Cosmo magazine, all that junk that's out there telling them how a woman should look, right? Sports Illustrated swimsuit, junk. And then their peers saying, hey, can you get into a size 1 jean? You're 5'10". Please don't get into a size 1 jean. You're insane. So how it's not even practical. Could you imagine dropping some of the top French models from a Paris fashion show in the jungle, giving them a spear and a rock and say survive?
Right. Be a sad couple of minutes there. That's all that would be.
That's all they were left. A damn pangolin could kill them,
Probably just brush up against them. The scaly skin.
Exactly. Yeah.
Skin
As I say a lot of times, our current generation is really far from the greatest generation right now.
Yeah, we got a big mess on our hands.
We do. I mean, we have today, back then you had 17-year-olds storming the beaches of Normandy. And now we have 17-year-olds crying and needing a safe space because the internet went down at the coffee shop.
Yeah. I think the problem has been people will talk about old school and you're going to hear good and bad.
Yeah.
A young person talks about old school. A lot of times they're talking about abuse.
Yes.
They're not talking about discipline. Those are two very different things.
Yeah.
A loving person, in my opinion, is going to have discipline for their child because they know you're going to have to be able to push through discomfort to be successful in life, just to survive. It's okay. It's okay to have anxiety. Anxiety is part of life. Just because you're feeling something strong doesn't mean you need to medicate it or hide from it. You just stand there and let it pass. You take deep breaths and you know it's going to be over. And then hopefully you should believe that you're going to be bigger after that. And one of our podcasts before, one of the other things from years ago that stuck with me is you do that circle with all the dots in it. Remember that?
Yeah. Why don't you explain that to the listeners?
Okay. Fred took a piece of paper, put a circle on it, loose leaf piece of paper, probably before one of our neurology classes, and put about 50 dots. You were stabbing the paper like a lunatic for about 30 seconds. And he goes, that's you. That's your whole life right there. And that's how big you are. You're that circle, and those are your experiences. And I said, okay, that makes sense. And then he put a dot outside the circle. And he thought, oh, this is bad. Oh, look how uncomfortable it is. I'm outside my circle. What am I going to do? I'm experiencing fear and anxiety and neuroses. And then he drew a circle the same size, that bigger, so we'd incorporate that dot that he put outside.
And engulf the other dot, yes.
And he just said, okay, look how big you are now. And I thought, that's what it's about. It's about getting uncomfortable.
Yes.
And the more uncomfortable you get, think of the people you know that have been through a lot. I don't care if it's a war or a bunch of marriages or illnesses and abuse. Most of those people are really interesting to be around. They're bigger. They're not petty. People that die and come back, those near-death experience.
Yeah.
Why are they more interesting? Why are they calmer in more circumstances? Because their life has gotten gigantic. And what's a baby like? Well, a little baby cries a lot. Any little new stimuli, all kinds of things, right? Well, that little baby hasn't been alive long enough to make a giant circle, incorporate a lot of experiences, and train its nervous system to tolerate the stimulus that a lot of people call anxiety or fear. And you have to get comfortable, in my opinion, with being uncomfortable. And the neurology of that, getting on this topic, is interesting to me, because how does a person make the bigger circle, put those dots outside? One person can survive it, the other person can't. To me, it's what you associate it with. I associate physical discomfort with getting stronger. Now, it's different if I just drove a nail gun through my foot. But if I'm running up a hill with a 50-pound weight pack on and I can barely breathe and my quads are screaming at me, I think this is going to be pretty awesome when I try to do this next week and I get up this hill faster with the same weight on my back.
We had a hair challenge governor here for a while, and he used to say all the time, if something bad's going, it's just weakness leaving the body. Jesse Ventura.
I remember.
And I used to make fun of that comment, but it's so 100% true that pain you feel is weakness leaving the body. Yeah, it's not about a nail gun through the foot. We understand that. Right. If you have a disease or something, some neurosis that's horrible, yeah, you need professional treatment. But most of the time, somehow we're turning normal, depressions, low moods, high moods, anxieties, something that's uncomfortable. We're turning that into a disease now, when it was just dis-ease, a little less ease. But now it's a disease, it's a pathology. And I'm like, are you kidding me? I mean, that is what's going to make you grow. And you just don't grow that way. Like we said, a circle, you now can pick up on other things. I love what they say about busy people. You know, you're a busy person, I'm a busy person. What do they say? If you want something done, give it to a busy person. Well, he's back, his plate's already full, but I know how to balance my plate. Throw something else on it. I'll do it. I'll get it done. I'll get up earlier. I'll stay up later. You know, I'll do everything else faster to get this done. You give that to someone whose plate is almost empty, and nowadays that's glorified. Oh, you need that downtime. You need that, you know? So
yeah, tell me this, and this is interesting to me with your neurological knowledge, a sense of purpose. Okay, so you see people that have a job they don't like.
Okay.
They can't wait for retirement. They retire, and then they seem miserable. And it might be a transition, okay? But let's say it's not. And that transition time between working and retirement, they're trying to fill it in, trying to find purpose, but they can't find purpose. And then you find out later they got some kind of disease, and then they pass on. I've had that happen with a couple patients who are really loved, and it was tough. And they hated their job. And when they stopped working, what got me was, okay, you hated your job. Your life should be wonderful now. But their purpose, unfortunately, was hating their job. Right. So now they don't have that job. They don't have the hatred, and they don't have a purpose, and they're trying to repurpose themselves. So a person with purpose, let's say they through their whole life, they love their line of work, and let's say they retire and they get into 10 other wonderful things, and they have this great existence, and they live this long, healthy life. The neurology of that is what? Like, it starts as a thought. I have purpose. I have to get up early, and I have 10 things to do, and I'm going to enjoy them, and I'm going to change people's lives. What is the chemistry or neurology behind that? Like, where do you think that starts? What are the hormones released, and how do those organs come to life? Like, why is
oh
that
my goodness.
so
All right. So we're talking
summarize that.
Summarize it for the average crew. Oh man, it's like trying to explain a COVID virus to people who've never seen a pangolin, you know. I wore this shirt, you know, because initially during the pandemic they blamed a scaly anteater who keeps its nose down in the jungles of Vietnam on the coronavirus. And of course, I thought that was ridiculous. We know that we've been doing research. We're funding research for years. Before 2019, we talked about it. It's in all the journals. It still is. They didn't get rid of it. It's still there if you look for it. All you have to do is, Google it. But anyway, how people had a lack of understanding of viruses. So it was easy to hoodwink you. If you have ignorance meaning lack of knowledge of something, it's easy to pull something over. And the same thing goes with understanding how your mind works. I can tell you right now, I can go down the street, say walk to a construction site, and the guy running the bulldozer can tell me how it runs, how to fix the motor, the treads, how the hydraulics work. He knows more about that damn bulldozer than he knows his own mind, which is between his ears, how it works.
Sure.
Same thing at home. You can have a mom or a dad who's running a household of 4 or 5 kids. There's a birthday, there's a volleyball, there's a cheerleading, there's a football game. We got to do this. We also have to get this homework done. Oh, I got to pick up the dry cleaning. They can do all that. They can tell you how the entire household works. They can give you anniversary dates, birth dates, but they don't know how their own mind works between their ears. And they're going to have that for 80 years. Somehow, I'm backing all the way up, Doc. We have to get to the importance that it's okay to understand how the biology of how our brain works, and even the consciousness, the spirituality, how confidence changes the chemistry in our head, how fear changes the chemistry in our head, and how things like fear can lead to death and disease, and how confidence can overcome barriers that some people say, oh, it's a miracle. No, it's just science, it's just neurology. But somehow we have to get to the point where it's okay to understand, everything about the human body, to the point that you at least can have a cursory conversation with it. Oh, I lost you. Okay, we'll see if you come back. Hold on. I'll turn this off. Ooh, we lost you at 24.
All right. Ready, Mitch? Okay. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so something I really want to know, as we're talking about this, is one of the things that changes in our bodies, the sense of purpose that we have, would be some of the neurochemistry. And it's fascinating that our posture can change our hormones. I did this podcast, and I'll put in the links a while ago, just how standing in a superior position improves testosterone, sequential blood draws, people standing in different postures, and whether it's the oxygenation of the body or the nervous system or the spinal alignment, having proper curves right in your arms at the sides, like Superman stand, something about that improves testosterone. And you look at, even in sports, someone's playing hockey, they score a goal and their arms go up in the air like that.
Extension. Yep.
Right? So you think
Extension.
that's universal. You could go to the Bushmen of Kalahari, they do something victorious, their arms go up in the air. So that isn't, that's like that feeling of glory. And that is somehow in our nervous system. That moves further, and then it's this cavalcade of forward motion of success, right? More testosterone, certainly within balance, to put you in this optimum state of performance, energy, success, serotonin, these kind of chemicals. So talk to me a little bit about that, and how anything from purpose to posture, and how how somebody could maximize their hormones using those two things.
Oh, well, this is a long conversation, so we'll just start to simplify it. But you were just not created in Italy, right? You're Italian.
I am a
Okay.
mix of
You
a lot
go
of things,
back
right?
thousands and thousands, some say millions of years. I'll say 6.1 million years when we dropped out of the tree. Some have us going farther back than that. Some of these postures have a purpose. Postures have a purpose, just not for neurology. Okay, neurology is what drives everything we do. But for us to survive as a race, as a species, as a human, as a hominid, that means upright walker, that posture had to have a purpose. So let's just do depression, hiding. If I crouch down, you see me crouching down, crouch down. What does that do? One, it slows your heart rate. Saber-tooth tiger can't hear you. Slows your breathing. Saber-tooth tiger can't hear you. It also changes how your endocrine system works and your exocrine system works. Exocrine's like sweaty glands, armpits. Changes. You ever seen a real depressed person sit there and sweat? No. That's anxiety, right? Somebody with high anxiety. Manic does. So it actually slows digestion, so you don't hear you burp and fart.
Interesting.
You are hiding from that saber-tooth tiger. It changes the chemicals. You lower the serotonin levels, lower the dopamine levels. Dopamine's the one that makes us move and makes us happy, right?
It's like a hibernation state.
It's very hibernate. You're hiding. You don't want to move.
Like what you said about sweating, I was thinking of a depressed, anxious person, but exactly when someone's simply depressed, not anxious, they're going to be cold.
Cold, yeah. You want to be cold because
slow.
There's animals that sense heat. Do you want to die? There's snakes. They got, they will, pit vipers will bite you because you're warmer. They can't see crap. They have terrible eyesight, but they can feel the heat. So the rattlesnake goes by you, the saber-toothed tiger goes by you, and you're like, oh, then you said, I made it. And then, the big eagle comes down and kills your ass, So, but you got to understand that is what we pass down. And if you were an individual that could quickly hide and change your physiology, right? Then you got to live. And if you survived, you pass down that trait. This is called natural selection. And you pass that trait. And the more women or females that you could impregnate who also had that trait, little kids you made, and they survived, and so on and so on. So
we can change. We can change the basic success of our lives through certain posturing, because as long as we know, okay, I'm depressed, I don't want to be depressed, there's no reason to sustain this state, because I'm not trying to hide from vipers. I'm not trying to slow my metabolism down. So I should change how I breathe, how I move, where my arms are, what my posture's like, to pull myself out of that state.
Well,
So
and if
you and I both know this. You and I both know this, but I'm saying it so clearly
so people understand it.
Big picture.
If I move my scapulas from medial to lateral, so I move my shoulder blades out like this and scrunch, like I'm on a computer in a cubicle somewhere. Is that a fighting stance? Can I protect myself? No. This is a holding something, a carrying, but you are not an extension. Extension, making yourself bigger. What do they tell you when you see a bear? They don't say run. They say make yourself bigger. Put your arms up in the air, because that's all they sense. They only sense if something cowers or it extends. Extension is life. Getting your shoulders back. A lot of my friends on the powerlifting team. This is a plug out to Donnie Thompson, World's Strongest Man. He has what's called a bow tie. And it looks like a figure 8, and you put it around your shoulders, and it pulls your shoulder blades back. And you couldn't slouch if you tried. Big, thick apparatus. Everyone should wear those. Everyone should wear those. We'd have a much more confident society.
He wears that daily?
No, you wear it as part of the warm-up. Yeah, you don't want to weaken the muscles. But it's amazing, like after a long day of work and you're getting ready to lift weights, you throw that on, you can breathe better, your attitude change. You don't even need a pre-workout. You don't need a shot of drugs. You're like, whoa, all right, I'm ready to go. Get the chest out and attack. That changes the physiology. The information coming from little nerve endings called proprioceptors. They're like joint senses. I close my eyes. How do I know my hand is behind my head? Proprioceptors sending information to my brain. Well, that same information is archaic. It's ancient. And not only does it have information that my chest's up, my back's up, and I'm breathing, it sends information to my air, release the dopamine. He's ready to fight. He's ready to survive. He's ready to succeed. He's ready to thrive. And that is what posture can do for you. So if you are depressed, you put your head back up. I challenge anyone watching this if they're having depression. Put your chest up, breathe from your belly, not little ones up here. Breathe from your belly, get your arms out, and just put your head up. Look at the sun or clouds if you live in Minnesota or Buffalo. Look at the clouds, and you know what? Breathe. And then I say, okay, tell me about how your wife left you, or you lost your pickup truck, or you lost your dog, like a good country song. Tell me that. I mean, there's no way you can listen to The Cure with your shoulders back and your head up. It's impossible, right?
True.
So you have all that dopamine, all that energy. I just want to go out and take the world. That's an easy fix. You don't have to spend money on a copay, talking to a psychologist or psychiatrist or a counselor or a life coach. I'm going to put myself out of business. You're not talking. You just have to do that. And then you listen to energetic music. Like I gave that Kirk comment. Listen to music that's uplifting. Mm-hmm. I don't think you want to listen to gangster rap unless you want to knock over a liquor store, So you get your chest up, your head up, and that changes things. You have information coming from your proprioceptors into your cerebellum, the back of your head, that goes to your thalamus, the mid-thalamus. The mid-thalamus sends information up to our premotor cortex, where my hand is, to decide what we're going to do in the next few seconds. Picks which muscles work, which muscles don't work, puts together a plan. Then it moves to the motor cortex and sends down information down our spinal cord so we can go do what we need to do. I'm going to go clean the room today. I'm going to go mow the lawn. That's how you do it. You didn't have to pop a pill that changes how the chemistry in our brain works. And if you don't have that pill, you're in trouble, right? So that is an amazing thing. And if you do it enough times, you ready for this? You don't have to fake it. You don't have to push them together. It naturally goes back.
Becomes habit, reflex.
I think it's more than that, Mike. I think when we're born to thrive, not survive. The reason we are on the top of the food chain is because we were born to thrive. Where the hell is the Tyrannosaurus Rex? Where is it? I'm looking for it. Don't see it. Movies about them. Everyone, that looks scary. Scary. I don't see him. Damn thing didn't even make it through evolution. I did.
Mm-hmm.
Do you realize that every human walking the face of the earth is a winner? Is a winner, has the components to thrive and change their life and change their neighborhood and change their family and, do amazing things. We're also geared, we could do horrible things. We could wipe things out. We have that power. And that is all in our instructions in our nervous system by how we move and how we breathe.
One of the things you and I talked about years ago, and I think on a podcast one time, was the different shapes of people and the different skill sets that people have. You look at the sports shows it really well.
Yes.
What a tennis player is built like, what an offensive lineman's built like, what a running back's built like. And you think each of these has a specific gift due to the dimensions of the body and the muscular insertion and action and innovation. And I remember thinking, I'm kind of a generalist, right? I'm kind of like, I joke that I'm the default setting for man sometimes. and you're certainly not, right?
I'm the rock thrower.
Exactly.
You're talking about the bulb. Yeah.
You're gonna have someone push you up on top of a hill, and then you're gonna giant rock and roll it down on the enemies. And my skill set that's outside of norm is my ability to throw. I used to pitch baseball, play third base, and I could hit people with just about anything: a brick, a rock, a piece of shingling.
A spear. Hit that mammoth.
Absolutely.
We need to eat.
That's why the teamwork approach, the communal approach of existence, and people, like you're saying, they should be proud of the fact that their DNA, their genetics, their skill sets have made it this far.
Yes.
You're here, you're a winner from a lot of selection, a lot of pressure from the environment.
Yes.
Start, if you're depressed or you think, oh, my life is useless, all this kind of stuff, start, in my opinion, start at the very bottom and say, okay, I made it here. There's a reason I made this. Okay, so I have these basic skills. Let's try to put them to work, and let's get our physiology, our neurology to the point where we can take those skill sets and put them out into the world and have some value. I tell people if they're really depressed and there's no meaning in life and they come up with all that kind of negative talk, I'm like, you have to realize that what's going to make you happy is to go to service for somebody. I think it was Gandhi, right? He said, you want to find yourself, lose yourself in the service of others. That hit me really hard a long time ago. I thought that really is one answer. There's a lot of answers. That's one really good answer. I like that one. I don't know what to do with myself. Well, why don't I serve somebody and then see what happens? Well, then I become valuable. Person needs me. I serve them. They need me. And then the idea you and I talked about a while ago, if you remember this, the servant master concept. When you serve somebody, but somehow you're their master at the same time, it's pretty confusing. Right? I take my patient's shoes off and put them on sometimes. Then I'm telling them what to do with their entire life. So I served them in one sense, putting their shoes on, like I work for them in some really menial way. And then at the other end, I'm giving them masterful concepts to change their whole life, hopefully. And in that can be mind-boggling. I'm not going to stand there lofty and say, well, we're going to bring someone in and put your shoes on since you can't do it. No, I'm going to do whatever it takes to get the person up and going. And the servant master is something that I always expand on in my life. I don't mind being at the bottom serving someone or being at the top serving someone. It doesn't matter. Whatever's going to get the job done and get people to move from point A to point B so they're doing better in their life. And I know you're the same way. So you don't think that a whole bunch of stuff's below you.
Oh no. I take off coats. I clean up. I'm going to do the dishes when I get off of this podcast.
Exactly.
They're
be useful.
Be useful, and that's the thing too. We, like you said, going back to archetypes and body types. You don't see too many 300-pound pole vaulters. You just don't, because that's not what they're good for. Their body shape's not that good for that. We learn that in middle school and high school pretty quick, but we don't learn what gifts we have as far as our personality, like you said, intellect, emotions. There's people that have such a high emotional IQ. They could handle. Someone had a death of a spouse or a sibling. They can sit there and in half an hour talking to them, save that person's life. That is a skill. That is a gift. Why aren't we learning that at a very young age? Because we are communal. We need that. But we try to pigeonhole people. You try to put the 300-pounder with a pole in his hand. My good friend Mike Retka, he's going to turn 60 this summer. He's going to try out for the worlds at pole vaulting. And we were laughing, like the older you get, the less you have to do in the masters category. I go, what do you have to hit? 14, 15 feet? He started laughing. He goes, just 12 at 60. I'm like, I started laughing. Said, amazing. But so, and I sponsor his pole vaulting championships. He has one coming up here in August. I love going there and watching the college and the high school. But it's amazing. You don't see anyone that looks like me doing pole vaulting. Now, I don't complain. I definitely don't turn them into the news and say, look, they're being biased. No, people would laugh because I'm not built for a pole vaulter, right? I don't need a safe space. I'm good. Put me in where I need to be. I think of a lot of our problems are we are pushing people into areas they shouldn't be. And it's not okay. I think all of it, all of us were given a gift, a skill to share, to serve. Every one of us. There isn't one person that doesn't have it. And sometimes it takes time to figure that out, right? I mean, could you imagine me being born into a city of pole vaulters? Man, I'd be depressed. I'd have anxiety. I'd be on medications. Oh, you don't belong. Look in the mirror. You don't fit everyone else, right? That's one of the problems we have in society now. We're putting people in groups and tribes and all that. It's like, no, we're all the world is. And look, here's my supposed to do, contribute to my village of pole vaulters. I'm the one who has to carry all 20 of them instead of letting my guys wear out carrying their pole. Hey, give me that. Give me another one. I'll carry them all. Boom, boom, boom. And everyone goes, oh, thanks, Fred. I just set a personal record because I didn't have to walk up the hill with all my extra pole vaults. Because those things are funny. There is a purpose everywhere for someone. And that neurologically will release dopamine and oxytocin. Oxytocin, most people hear about that hormone in our head, that neurotransmitter. Is like, oh, that's what causes milk letdown in women, pregnant women, or not pregnant, lactating women, that they can feed their child. But it also has a great advantage that it helps us connect with others. We now know that people that are autistic, a condition where you can't connect with others, is caused in part by a decrease in oxytocin. I have a medical doctor, and he does the drug thing, that gives a good friend of mine, work out with him once in a while. He gives autistic kids oxytocin and normalizes them quickly.
Interesting.
Now, it is interesting. Now, of course, I say, okay, that's a drug. How do you produce oxytocin? Hugs. What's the worst thing an autistic person you could do is touch them, right?
Yeah.
Wow. That's the reason.
Interesting.
That's the reason. Well, why don't we take a year or two and, start holding their hands slowly, touching them, getting to the point where they get hugs all the time, and then they wouldn't be autistic. But we don't take the time to do the natural method, right? And so it is amazing that there's a medical method, but the biology, the physiology is right in front of us. We're not taking the time. We don't want to do the work. Well, here's the problem. If you don't do the work, the body is used to long, slow change. So is society, right? And that's how we figure out how to get things done. Well, if you overcome it with something quick like that, bang, sometimes you short circuit things. Think about hormones. I was going to talk a little bit about hormones today. I can see that being a whole crazy podcast. But, say a woman 60 years old, going through menopause, 50 years old, going through menopause, and their estrogen level is lower, right? Well, their estrogen levels are related to their progesterone levels, to their DHEA and DHT levels, to their testosterone levels, to their sex hormone binding globulin levels. All of that is mixed together. It's like you're trying to juggle 5 or 6 balls in the air, and you have to keep them perfectly balanced. And some of the balls are different sizes and shapes. So anyway, it's so amazing that we go ahead and say, oh, I'm going to give this woman estrogen. Well, what happens? They end up getting cancer, right? Breast cancer, heart attacks, diseases, because you didn't look at the bigger picture that I offset. And well, when I give them estrogen, when they're not supposed to have it and their normal biological aging, those receptors on the cells are downregulated, that it has to go to another tissue. and it infects and diseases and poisons those tissues.
Right.
Wow. So you mean there's this big creative balance that we have to have? Yes. I was trying to talk to someone about infertility, and a lot of chiropractors are blamed for fixing fertility issues. That's a joke. But if you look at things like sugary foods, white sugar, these people end up with high insulin, right? So if you have a high insulin level, then that decreases your sex hormone binding globulin. So that's a protein that carries testosterone, estrogen, progesterone around your body. It doesn't walk around by itself. It's the Uber. So your binding globulins or your Uber trying to get into the cells. When you decrease the Ubers, you have a lot of people just walking around not knowing where to go. No taxis, no Ubers. That actually increases your estrogen, which guess what? Screws up your periods. You can't get pregnant. So, and guess what happens with that too? If you have high insulin, you actually raise cortisol and adrenaline levels. So just eating a sugary food tells the brain, because of what we were talking about, evolution, thousands and thousands of millions of years of work, tells the brain that I need to be in fight or flight, or we're moving across the valley. Hey, Mike, we're done with this valley. We got to go to the next valley. Oh, where are the fruits? We better eat all our sugar now because we got to carry the kids and the spears and the boulders. We got to move to the next village. And that's what we do. And when we get there, we don't eat the sugary stuff because we don't need the energy, right? Yeah. It was such an intuitive way of living. Well, what happens? If you eat too much sugar, your insulin level spikes. There's not enough exercise or movement. You're not moving across the valley to burn it off. So cortisol goes up, adrenaline goes up. When cortisol goes up and adrenaline goes up, progesterone goes down. You are now infertile because you have a shitty diet.
Interesting.
It is. And people go through, and how's this happen? All the time. Here's a good example of how adrenaline and cortisol play a role, and just fertility. You hear it all the time. Oh, we've been trying to get pregnant for 10 years. We did the hormones. We spent all this money. We're just going to adopt. And adoption is a great thing. My wife's adopted. And it's all right, we adopt. What happens as soon as they adopt that kid? They get pregnant, right?
Right.
The stress and the cortisol go down. Progesterone goes up. So here's something external, Mike, that and we're not just talking fight or flight hormones. There's something external that controls your fertility, because it made sense. If you're running away from the saber-toothed tiger, you don't have time to drop a baby. Oh, pick that up for me, will you? It doesn't work like that.
You need the nest. You need a secure, nurturing environment.
Yes. So there's a good example. So imagine this, and I'm gonna go with the nurturing thing. I'm glad you mentioned that. You saved me like 10 minutes. So if high cortisol and stress tell me to run, right? And that's why exercise works so good, because our bodies think, oh yeah, we are in fight or flight, burn this off, right? That's okay.
Exactly.
But say you're not, you come home, you're exhausted, you put your feet up on the couch, you're still a little tense from work. I need to relax. I need to regulate. I need to unwind. We hear, well, yeah, you're trying to burn off cortisol and adrenaline, but you don't want to lay down and not move. You want to actually go for a walk around the block. That's how you burn it off. Well, I've been working all day. Then go walk around the block. Or get on your bike. Do something where you're moving so you burn that extra adrenaline off, because you will change your hormones, right? You will change your hormones. If you're under stress, why do I need testosterone? You don't, right? You don't. You can't procreate. So here's what happens. It matters your age. Here's what happens. If you're young, your testosterone spikes because you're fighting. But if you're over 40 or 30, now remember, we only live to like 40 or 50. So we have a blunted idea of what middle age is. If you're over 30 or 40, stress actually lowers your testosterone. At 15, it raises it. And at over 30 or 40, it drops it, because your cells say, hey, we're not supposed to be procreating right now. When you're 15, it's, hey, we're fighting off the saber-toothed tiger. This is how complex this is. And it's like Jenga. I really tell when a patient says, Dr. Clary, I'm gonna take this one drug, just one drug, and I'm taking this vitamin. I'm like, slow down, let me see what's going on, because just that little addition can offset everything. If someone is sensitive, if you say, okay, I'm going to add some carbs, some simple carbs to my diet, it's no big deal. And then they have a terrible weekend. I got into a fight with my spouse. This went wrong. My boss almost fired me. I don't know what was going on at work. What did you eat during the weekend? Oh, it was a birthday party for my 3-year-old. I had a little too much cake. Well, that's the reason. It's the cake. Mm-hmm. Makes no sense to why their boss is yelling at them Monday. But for me, in my world, this is how twisted I am, Doc. That's what I see. Does that make sense?
Makes absolute sense. If you're going to take, I think it's fascinating what you said about being 15 and stress increasing testosterone and being 45, and it decreases testosterone, because I always see stress as, okay, the body's going to come along and it's going to rise up to be able to deal with this to a point, and then it's going to fail if it can't tolerate it for a long. I mean, how much adrenaline can you put out for how long before you just burn out and you can't do it? So that was kind of my idea historically. So the idea that but it matches nature. If you're 45, you shouldn't need to. The body isn't going to say, well, we need to reproduce. That's
you ready? You ready for this?
Number
this
one
harsh.
thing there.
All right. No one throw any tomatoes. I know I'm going to get some DMs, but this is what I see in nature. I've taken enough zoology classes. My testosterone goes down under stress, because if we're a whole tribe, a clan, a family running away from a saber-tooth tigers, who do they let in the rear? The old men and the old women. What are they? The baits. Yeah, you're seeing where I'm going. But if you watch it in nature, that's what happens, right?
Okay.
The old are stuck in the back. You see the lioness eating the damn wildebeest, and I'm like, they either eat the very young who can't move, or the very old. Why? Because the very old are the sacrifice to allow allow the species to continue. Sorry, it's zoology. I'm sorry, it's not politically correct, but I watched enough Mutual of Omaha's Animal Kingdom enough times that you see it. And that's exactly what it is. Now, I'm not saying we have to follow biological evolution. I know you follow some of that. I think we're socially evolved now. We can choose for that 4-year-old with that disease to live, because socially we've decided that our minds and our hearts are more important. Okay, so that's good. I like social evolution, but you still can't go against the biological laws we're stuck with. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
So you still have to run the machine the way it was built. And this takes a while to evolve. And none of us will be around when it does evolve to something different. So we're stuck with it.
You look at natural selection, evolution, and some of the Darwinian concepts, and obviously there's a bunch of holes in that, and that's a whole nother podcast.
Yeah.
But some of the stuff holds water, and you think about how nasty some of it appears, and then how as we've evolved socially, as you're saying, we make up for that. We care for the weak. We take care of the old and the young and the diabetics and whatever horrifying disease, from removing a gene out of the egg. So this gene line that had this specific disease, those children no longer can actually get past that disease on. It's been removed. I saw a fascinating documentary on that. This, I forget what disease it was. Might have been a blood clotting disorder, a hemophilia of some type. And they removed it out of the woman's egg. And that child no longer can pass that gene on. It's absolutely been gone. So you've taken it out of, in a sense, taken it out of society in that gene line, which, is fantastic. I mean, that's an evolutionary step that man is inserting in to make people stronger, healthier, and less dependent on medication and things like that. And as a healthcare practitioner, but at the same time, you want to understand nature's trends so you can yield them the best you can, like you're just saying there. So if I'm wanting to keep my testosterone high, I'm not going to just keep doing stressful things and pushing myself at my age. I'm going to be like, okay, I need rest.
Yes.
I need nurturing.
Yes.
And that'll keep me in my prime, in the best I can be genetically and at this time in my life, which that's a great thing to know. I think that's
Well, and we call it seasons of life. You hear that, oh, it's your season. Well, tell me about the seasons of life. They know nothing about it. They can say the quote, but they know nothing about it. When you're 14 or 15, or I'll give you a great example. There's a mom who comes in, and you've had hundreds of cases like that. I've had hundreds too. Mom comes in, you have two boys or three boys that are just ornery, moving around 100%. She goes, God, I can't just get them to sit down. And of course, I go, why? You need to have them do more things. They should be in 2 or 3 sports each. Get them into karate, get them into swimming. They should be doing football. Well, you think contact's bad for you? No, it's good for the world. I'd rather have them, beat up each other on a field than take a gun on in some far country somewhere. This is what we need. And so she started doing that, and all of a sudden their grades go up. They get along at home. Well, I said, so that those kids, their testosterone, their dopamine, the chemicals in their brain, the chemicals in their body were saying move, 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 fight, fight, fight for what? The tribe, right? Fight for the tribe. I mean, you would be showing them how to throw the spear at the woolly mammoth. You have
they're honing the skills of their
yes,
physical body, which
yes,
you and I know, if you look at dyslexics and different learning disabilities, a lot of them can be pushed along or nurtured through physical movements.
yes,
Cross crawling, brain gym, that whole world.
yes.
That is what they're doing when they're just playing in the yard. When my friends and I decide to take hockey sticks and dig into the yard as deep as we can to see if we can find china, or at least feel the warmth of the molten core that we learned about in school. I was about 4 feet down in the backyard, and I got my hand. I'm thinking, oh, you can feel temperature with the back of your hand better than the front of your hand. So I got the back of my hand on the ground, and I'm imagining some heat coming from the molten lava core that I'm getting really close to.
Yeah, 4 feet, you're getting close.
Yeah, right.
Like and exactly, that's what children need. We need to see what's really happening. Well, they can't sit still in school. Well, you remove gym class. We need gym class for certain populations. Everybody needs movement, but there's some people that can only move. Things like dyslexia. We need dyslexics. They were the ones. You ever go into a field and they say, hey, can you see the tiger hiding behind the grass? And I'm like, what are you looking at? And then they circle it or something. Oh, there it is. There's Waldo. I couldn't find Waldo. Well, guess what? If everyone was seeing from left to right, then our ass would get eaten by a saber-toothed tiger. We needed those outliers that could see the world visually differently. That's what we need. And your dyslexics, they don't use central vision. They usually use out here somewhere, right? Hey, I don't think that's a weed. Damn. All right, send grandpa out there to get eaten while we run away. That's what you needed, right? That's how we survive. But we don't want, this is what gets me. People jump up and down and say, it's my body, it's my body, it's my choice, especially with the vaccine debate. We won't go into the other debates, but that there was all that debate recently. And then I would go, you're right, but you know how your body works. Because if you really think that we each owe our neighbor something, like respect and all that, you have no idea how your body works. So don't tell me how mine works. You're unqualified. Well, I just know it's mine. Maybe we shouldn't be giving the keys to the Maserati to the 16-year-old. Something tells me, that we have to somehow at least educate everybody on how this thing works, because maybe during the next pandemic, they won't leave the liquor stores and McDonald's open and close the gyms. You see where I'm going with that? We are so backwards evolutionary that now we're producing chemicals. We have a whole society that sat around and did nothing. We dropped our dopamine. So now we have crime rates up, immune system dysfunction. All these problems that we're having in our society are a problem. It's this big biological social experiment we did for the last 3 years to try to change our biology. You can't change it. It is what it is. And now we're dealing with the repercussions of it. It's amazing.
I agree. One of the things that bothered me right off the start was I couldn't believe the low level of knowledge people had about their immune system.
Oh,
It really was. I don't know where that missing thing was, and I realized, I sat back and I thought, okay, my knowledge in the immune system is so much higher than so many people walking around. Part of this because I had allergies as a kid, which led
okay.
to migraines, which got me into the chiropractor, which then, about 90% resolved the migraines, but they still existed. I still had neck tension. And then I had this nausea and all this other stuff. So my allergies are still bothering me. So I had to get into, why am I hyper reacting to things? The neurologist told me I was cursed. I just didn't fall for that one. So I thought, what can I do about it? And I realized, some of the garbage food I was eating as a kid that was, hyper exciting my immune system because I'm putting stuff in my body. It doesn't know what to do with. So it's treating it as non-self. And then you get the sinus issue and mucus in your throat and all the, skin rashes and wheezing. And pretty soon you have this hyperimmune body. And I understood, I didn't get sick very often. So my immune system was racing all the time.
Yeah.
As long as I got a fair amount of sleep and lived a relatively healthy life, I was a pretty physical kid when I could be, when I didn't have asthma attacks. When I started living that way, I just got healthier and healthier over time. And the more I learned about my immune system and my allergies, the healthier and the better I felt. So all of a sudden, here I am. It's 2020, and people have no idea what they're talking about and telling me things. I'm like, you're really wrong about that. It's not that simple. That's partially correct. You think how big lies are based on shreds of truth. And I thought, okay, I get where you're coming from, but here's the actual situation that we're in. The idea of closing a gym during the pandemic was just unbelievable. I mean, put in giant fans,
Yeah.
you put in heat exchangers,
Yeah.
get people to, like you say, close the McDonald's. Well,
Yeah. If they would have closed all the fast food stores and require people only to eat, I'll even go with whole grains, whole vegetables, whole fruits, nothing processed. Could you imagine the change in health we would have had? You have time to do it. You're home now, right? You're home now.
Yeah.
Fresh fruit, free to everyone, not a vaccine. Give them some protein. Here's a slab of meat. Go gnaw on a deer a little bit. You'll live longer. It makes no sense.
When we're having a busy day and a patient asks a question, something about diet, I'm like, eat real food and move.
Yep.
I mean, how simple do you want it? Eat real food and move. That's what I do. I don't have this big calorie count thing going. I don't get on a scale very often. This is what I do, and it works. And they're like, oh, all right. And then obviously there could be a struggle there. Are you using food for comfort? You want to change your physical state. You don't like the way you feel right now, and food is going to change that physiology and make you feel different. I get that. I grew up in an Italian house. That's how everything was celebrated or mourned with food.
Well,
Right?
if you think about an Italian house, you have that big food, or any house, Greek or anyone, where food is where the family comes together and you get your serotonin bump, your oxytocin bump in your head. It's the same chemicals that, if you get high from a street drug, it's the same chemicals release, or, the feeling from an orgasm or winning the lottery, it's all the same chemical. So, you're releasing that just sitting around at home, not moving. And you're releasing dopamine, not moving, when dopamine has always been there for us to control. Think about, let's just go back 20, 30,000 years ago, 40,000 years ago. I mean, we ate and we celebrated, but where were we? We weren't sitting down. We were squatting, right? Maybe I would get a rock. Hey, get off my rock. That's my rock. I would move a rock over toward the fire. I'd be gnawing on some, deer or woolly mammoth or woolly rhino, and we'll be eating, but we're still, our head's on a swivel. It'd be turning all the time because you're looking for the next danger, right? We were constantly pushing dopamine. I heard something. I'm going to walk over there. Let me get my rock, and I go, oh, come back. Let me finish my meal. We never sat down for an hour and a half and ate. When the heck would a caveman have time to sit down for an hour and a half, 2 hours? Well, Italian dinner, 4 hours, right? 4 hours. And, talk about the old times. Oh, remember Og? Yeah, it was real funny when that big bird came out of the side and got him. Yeah. We didn't do that. We ate, we looked around. Hey, You go over there with Mike and throw the spear some more. Then come back and finish your meal.
There's theories that so many of our emotional problems are related to the fact we have too much time to sit and think about ourselves, right? I mean, if you're trying to survive, you're climbing up a slippery, a mountain to once again escape the saber tooth. You're not going to really have time to contemplate the meaning of life as much. You're going to be like, okay, it's time to live. Someone's trying to eat me,
Oh my goodness!
Or I'm starving. I need to find food, and so. To put people in those circumstances, obviously that's terrible. That could be painful to a degree that you might not even be able to deal with it. But to have a challenge in your life, once again, like we talked about having a purpose in your life, I love the correlation between meaning and responsibility. Like you look at people that say, well, there's no meaning in life. I'm like, well, who are you responsible for? And they normally don't have a lot of responsibilities.
Yes.
Like, oh, interesting. So without responsibilities, you don't have meaning. And that connection between those two is fascinating to me. So I usually tell people, well, you don't even become responsible for somebody. Who are you responsible for? Almost everyone that tells me life has no meaning doesn't have anybody to be responsible for, or they've shirked those responsibilities.
Or they shirked them. And they don't realize, your legacy is your children. This is it. This is what you're here for. Which makes some of their actions painful or makes some of their actions a moment to be proud, I did okay. One of the things I tell patients they got so much leg pain or back pain. There's patients that come with that big file. They come into your office with the file. Hey, I got fibromyalgia. And I'm not knocking people that have this stuff, but it's amazing. They come in and that is their purpose. Looking, going to doctor. And, I tried to tell a buddy of mine this the other day. I said, you need a higher purpose. Pick them. And I do this with a lot of my patients, almost all of them. I say, pick a race to do, a 5K, triathlon, a powerlifting meet, a bodybuilding show, a body transformation contest. Pick something big. Like even if it's just to walk the Twin Cities Marathon. That's 26 miles. Well, that would be a great accomplishment. It'll take you all day, but that would be a great accomplishment from where you are now. But why am I shooting so high? Well, the principle's called overtraining. They call it tapering in swimming. That if you set your goal, say to Pluto, you're going to hit Mars, right? If you set your goal, your health goal high, you definitely will hit everything in between. It's that circle, right? It's that circle. If you broaden it out, and I'll tell my patients, hey, pick a big goal and work your life like you're really trying to attain that goal. And guess what? When you have such a big purpose in life, it will drag you to success. You will thrive. So I have a patient that, they want to walk we're trying to get them to walk the half marathon within a year. Lose weight, they get in shape, they're eating good. Oh, the back pain's gone, knee pain's gone, depression's gone. And then, something happens and they couldn't do it. Oh my God, I didn't hit my goal. Dude, you couldn't even walk in here without breathing heavy. Look at you in the mirror. You didn't make it to the marathon, but how about we work for that next year? Maybe that's more practical. But they're human beings again. Everyone forgot that when we were, tribes, that everyone had a purpose. And if you didn't have a purpose, you weren't in the tribe, right?
Yep.
I mean, remember, crime penalties were high back in those days.
Oh, yeah.
You just stole my meat. I'm throwing you off the cliff. You didn't wait your turn. You didn't say yes sir, no sir.
Well, I think when in raising kids, one of the things I read about midway through my children's upbringing was that it was important to make your kids likable, and that likability had to do with people wanting to interact with them. And when they had that interaction, you formed social skills that were going to be able to help you select the proper mate, get along with coworkers, and be able to just be generally successful. And a lot of people say, well, I want my child to be a leader. Okay, well, some leaders are pretty obnoxious people. They can lead, and that's great, and we need them. But they're not always the friendliest guy. They're not always the most understanding person. You look at the leaders in politics, for example, and it's horrifyingly perfect examples of that.
True.
So I remember Jerry Seinfeld one time said that he wants for president the guy who doesn't want to be president. The guy you got to wake up and go, come on, get out there and be the president. And he's like, come on, it's a terrible. I want to do it. It's an ego. I don't want to do it. That's the guy you want, and you can understand why, because he's not doing it for some massive, grandiose, scheme that he's got planned to, keep himself, the biggest man on the mountain for the rest of existence and his lineage and take over the world, kind of obnoxious stuff. But making your kids be able to be likable, but at the same time efficient and caring, and all the stuff you got to do. But the likability component, I wrestle with it first. I'm thinking, well, that makes sense, but what is that? Why is that so important? Like, what is it? Because you want them to be successful. Well, you want to be successful, make them be able to be in a group of people and be part of that community. Not be a robot, not be a follower necessarily. Be a balanced individual who people don't mind being around. And because then there's play. And with play, there's community. And with community, there's socialization. And then you become someone that is valuable and someone acceptable. But at the same time, it still doesn't mean, because I used to think it meant, well, you're just turning your child into a little robot, a corporate little slave, a worker bee. Not at all. Those are, to me, once I figured it out, those are two very different things. Likability doesn't mean that you're not going to make a difference. It means you're going to be socialized and potentially make a massive difference, because people want to be around you. They want to work for you, for example.
When you teach your children boundaries and they realize they came up to a boundary and they made the correct behavior choice, dopamine's released, that mind we talked about in the beginning that our brain forms, you get clearer connections, it becomes more efficient, and the next choice becomes easier, and the next choice, and they can pass those choices up so they can navigate. We're going to have challenges in life, we're going to be uncomfortable, but we navigate them more correctly once we teach those kids simple boundaries. I always say, I go into my kids' room and say, why is this bed not made? We got a messy one here, and I always apologize. Yeah, I was messy. You probably got that gene for me, and we sit and we talk about it, and they feel better when that room is clean, right?
Yeah.
And now they're teenagers. Hey, kids come over all the time, and they're like, oh, thank you for showing me. And couldn't believe it. I was like dumbfounded. I'm usually not at a loss for words ever. One of my kids came up to me a couple years ago and go, thank you for making me clean my room, because now I'm in high school and we have friends just come over, and I drive my car because all my kids drive. They just pick up friends and they come over for a couple hours, study, have a snack, and they leave. Well, they're not, it doesn't look like chaos. So it's interesting because now they're like, oh, now I understand. Yeah, you put some boundaries, some rules, and then the world works. And when you're confronted where that rule doesn't work very well, you evolve past it. Either the behavior has to evolve differently or the rule has to change. And that's changed in our society over and over again. Women voting, all the things that society does for changes. But that we're still bound by our neurology. So our neurology will say, if we do it correctly, we get a shot of dopamine. Here's the problem I see. We are rewarding people, kids, children, even adults now with dopamine for not doing anything. Participation medals, participation awards, just showing up. I hate that. Well, 90% of success is just showing up. No, it's not. It is not. You actually have to participate. Life is not a spectator sport. And if you spectated 40,000 years ago, we tied you to a stake. So the saber-tooth tiger would eat you and not little Og here, who's going to grow up to be a leader.
Yeah, toss you in the volcano as a sacrifice.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. Gone. You won't last. Oh, you talk back to me? We really have socially evolved, and I'm not trying to downplay abuse. Absolutely not. I'm trying to have some fun with, where we've come from as a species. But if you really think about it, we're bound to this neurology. But we're more bound, tying it all back together from the beginning by how we think and how we move. And like you said, our postures. I'm sitting in this chair. I keep trying to lean back because I don't like sitting this long. It's not healthy for you. I want to make sure that I'm moving and can, clear my lungs, because that's the way I want to go through life. No matter what's happening to you, your grandmother was right. Hey, put your chin up.
Yeah, my grandmother was a massive force for that. She watched Jack LaLanne. Her and I did jumping jacks.
Awesome.
It turned out Jack LaLanne was a chiropractor and never told anybody, because way back then it was kind of voodoo.
Well, he would have been arrested in the 30s.
Well,
Remember
yeah,
that?
right.
He would have been arrested. You couldn't say anything.
Crazy, man. Crazy. Someone told me the last chiropractor that was jailed in the United States was in Louisiana in like 1975.
Yeah, I think that was the last law. Yeah. Can you believe that?
Yeah.
We were alive. I was alive. Were you alive? You were alive.
Well, the problem was, I think the problem remains, and I think the challenge we should look at is how big pharma, as they grow and become stronger, will they do that again? Will they try to do that again? From my understanding, when you read between the lines, they are trying to eliminate everything that's competitive with the drug model. And that's pretty dangerous. And thank God we have a lot of smart, common sense people walking around that enjoy the natural healing arts, that are in them. So I'm always promoting people to become chiropractors and naturopaths and physical therapists and personal trainers and
acupuncture, everything,
homeopaths, all that stuff, because we need an army of people saying there are other answers besides medicating yourself. Besides, surrendering to that. And that's what these podcasts are about. That's why I like doing them. I like doing with you immensely, because you're a voice of reason, for one thing. Whoever thought that? You
don't tell my family that.
Yeah, well, you weren't when we were younger, that's for sure. Unreasonable guy in the class. I remember the questions you'd ask some of the professors, like, "Oh, we're going to be here a while. Fred's in a mood. He's going to get this professor really irritated."
We're ready for this? Were any of my questions ridiculous or incorrect?
Never. That. No, there were these, like, I remember one professor asking some of the different diagnoses for a case study.
Oh, yeah.
You'd always put your hand up. You'd say vertebral subluxation. And she would roll her eyes and go, "Yes, Fred. Yeah, that, of course. It could be a distortion pressing on the nerves. Yeah. Anything else?" It used to bother you that we're in a chiropractic college and that wasn't like discussed enough, that let's look at the neurodynamics of a distortion in the spine and the manifestation of that. Well, we're still talking, medicine. And yeah, obviously we were getting our education in the Western medical model and the diagnostic procedures, but you used to like to wake up the class with, subluxation. I'll be like, yeah, that's 100% true. Right.
And look where, if you look at the most successful chiropractors, just not how many patients they see, but in philosophy, in intellect, they're ones that could see what I was saying, is that it's more that you, just like we talked about the whole hormonal balance. Mm-hmm. You can't say, "Oh, you have a little asthma," right? So, we're going to give you a puffer. I want you to use it twice a day, blah, blah, blah. And the patient follows lockstep, uses the albuterol, raises the heart rate, raises the blood pressure. The blood pressure and the heart rate stay high enough that cortisol and adrenaline are released more readily. That cortisol and adrenaline actually just causes progesterone to go into the tank. And then you have a 16, 17-year-old. She's going on the pill too and using a puffer. Oh, great. And then at age 35, can't figure it out why they can't get pregnant.
Right.
Oh, you know what? You have ovarian cysts. That's what caused that. And I almost want to say, no, it's because you used a puffer when you were 17 and you taught your body you were in fight or flight. You're not supposed to have children, right? You're still running. It's like Forrest Gump. Run, Forrest, run. You've been running for decades. Stop running. Then you can get pregnant.
Yeah. And that's why I wanted to have you on this podcast, is to get into some of the concepts behind hormones, how they're affected by thought, by action, certainly by medication, and to get into, what can be done, like these hacks. I think we went over probably 35 hacks in here. You have to separate them out. You pull them out of the other conversations, but it's I think it's so important that we continue to grow in understanding how can we use our mind, how can we use our body, our diet to normalize and bring back hormones and the only in all the neuro hacks, the neurology of our body, because it's so misunderstood. It's a massively growing field. I'm sure that's why you got your diplomat in neurology. You just needed to continue to grow in that area because it's always been a fascination of mine. Because what's more complex than the nervous system? Like we did that one podcast on psychoneuroimmunology, and you nicknamed it voodoo medicine. And I thought that's really interesting. Okay. I figured out, okay, so it's about belief. It's about the expression chemically of belief and where does that go? When you believe something, what is the chemistry behind that? And it doesn't matter in that moment if it's true or it's false. And later that will certainly mean a lot because fallacies lead to disasters, lies lead to disasters. But when you believe something to be true in that moment, in that short term, think of how the body changes, what it does, how it's going to adapt to that as a truth, and it's going to put you from point A to point B. And if it's a true, a higher truth, that point B is going to be a wonderful place to exist. And if it's not going to be so comfortable, but you're still going to go there. And you're going to have the neuropeptides and for everything from adrenaline to testosterone to, anything in that, serotonin, anything in that area, elevated and brought to the next place. So in summary, Fred, one of the things I want to leave people with is a simplified couple of steps they can take to hack their neurology, right? Because that's the title of this podcast. And we've gone over a lot of material. Summarize for me if you said, okay, I want maximum neurology. I want the maximum neural state for my body and my people. Give me some real quick take-home tips for people that you can say, okay, here's three things you can do daily or within the next week to get that neurology to perform at the highest level. We talked about purpose for one thing, and the expression of that, and managing testosterone through the levels of stress that you're under. Expand on that just a little bit for us. I guess summarize, don't expand.
You've already. All right. Yeah, you don't want me to expand. We'll be here for 10 hours. I can go all day.
It's like studying with you back in school. Like at 4:00 in the morning, Fred. I think we've got the material covered. No, I got another pot of coffee. We're getting an A on this test. I'm like, we're already getting an A. I know
we're already getting an A. We're rewriting the test. We're going to correct it for them. So understand that you're driven by your neurology, which means what you eat, what you think, and your environment are important. They're not neutral. They're not negative. They are important. So I'll say it again. Your environment is important. What you put in, your internal environment, is important. That's what your nervous system has to go with. And how those two meet, which is your thinking, is important. Well, Fred, is it just positive thinking? No, it's just not about being Tony Robbins and pumping, rainbows and sunshine up your skirt. It's not about that. It really is thinking about choices. So what's my choice today? I can get up, yesterday's a good example. I didn't have any room on my schedule for Wednesday. There wasn't room for one more patient. And then my front desk called in, she's got some issues. She's pregnant. So I figured that's coming, and then my 19-year-old couldn't fill in. She started her second or third job during her gap year. And so I had to turn to my wife and say, you're going to have to cancel your meeting tonight. We got tons of people here and there's no way I can run the whole place by myself. So I was supposed to have a bad day. I showed up. I got there early because I like to prep before things. So preparation, how you think about something, is very important. So show up early to work. Show up early to whatever you have to do. If you ask my kids, what's on time? 5 minutes early. It's like robots. They'll just say it because that's what I tell them. Always be 5 minutes early. Just pretend you're going to your life is your favorite rock concert. Would you come late? No, you would go early. Well, every day is your rock concert. So I get up, I get there early. I'm getting the files. I do not carry a file into the room with me. I read everything. I look at my whole day an hour before I start because from the first to last patient, I will say everything back to them that they went through. I just review. Oh yeah, You were, oh, hockey. Where were you? Oh, baseball. Oh, new job. And I go through and I have full conversations with these people as I'm treating them because I'm preparation. Preparation helps that neurology. That really, it prepare. So get up early enough that you can prepare for the day. You get up, if you want to have your coffee or your herb drink or your protein drink, have that and start thinking about your day. A day that's not planned, you plan to fail. You hear these things, but it's true. So even though I had everybody sick, I was like, no, I'm controlling my life. I'm going to get there earlier than I early get. And good thing I did, the light went out when I flipped right in the reception room. Nice. And I'm like, isn't that great? So I called maintenance. They got in there within a half an hour. Of course, my wife comes in, sees the lights out. She goes, oh, great. Did you really talk to Clem? Yes, I talked to him. I didn't leave a message. Called him about 5 times till he answered. Yes, he's coming in to fix it. Because absolutely, with all those people, I want it done. So those are the things you do. You prep for it. And then I was ready. I put my best shoes on, preparation. I visualized and thought about my whole day. Now, you don't have to, say a mantra and get down on your knees on a prayer cloth and, do some far Eastern meditation or prep. Visualization can be like I do. I flip on Channel 5 News. I have my hot cup of coffee. And I'm saying, okay, what's going on today? Close my eyes. Oh, I got 60 patients scheduled in 4 hours. How am I going to do it? Have no room. Okay. Oh, and I actually had 2 walk-ins too. And they were new patients. And I still worked them into the day. And I'm thinking, okay, how do I do this? 2 minutes, 2 seconds. It doesn't matter. You prep for your day. Then at the end of the day, review. I like dopamine. I mean, people come home and they go, oh, what a terrible day. Wait a minute. Was it a terrible day or an exhausting day? There's difference. I love when I have a good workout, right? Like, oh my God, my pecs feel like they're going to fall off. My legs are hurting. I must have fibromyalgia. No, I just squatted 800 pounds. That's what it is. Oh, yeah, I deserve this. Like you feel, when you get a good workout and you're like, yes, gains, don't steal my gains.
My favorite thing is going to bed exhausted.
Yes.
I like not being able to almost walk to the bed. If I'm like staggering to the bed out of exhaustion, I lay down. That feeling of I've given it everything all day to me is like heavenly. And then you just fall asleep within minutes instead of a half hour. Because I've had some bouts.
I'm out like that.
Like that.
I'm out like that.
You gave it all today.
I left it on the dance room floor. Everything. Leave it there. Why would you leave anything on the field? Just like the coaches say, we're down by, this is funny because it happened to the Minnesota Vikings this year. They're down by 5 touchdowns at halftime. It's never happened. It happened to one other team, which is your favorite team, too, the Buffalo Bills, during a playoff game. They were down by 4, I think. But we were down by 5. We're going to outdo you. And everyone's down. They got their head down. Now, here's a change. In the middle linebacker, and it's all in the news because it really did happen, looked at the quarterback and said, we're only down by 5 touchdowns. Let's get moving. And it happened. Now, at that moment, he zapped the entire team, right? They start giggling. I'm like, yeah, we could do this. We're only down by 5. Now, I'm sure some of the second, third string thought that was ridiculous. And I bet you the coaches didn't even believe in it. I mean, I ready for this? I turned the game off.
Oh, wow.
Remember when we both turned off that Buffalo Bills game and they were down by
Houston Oilers?
Yes. Houston.
Yeah.
And was it Frank Wright who came in?
Yeah,
I'm like, oh, you guys can't come back. You got a second stringer in.
Yeah.
Let's study some more. Let's get that A,
Yeah.
And then we flipped it back and I'm like, what? What is going on? It's like, well, no one told Frank he couldn't win. He's only down by 4. So.
Yeah, everything that could go right went right.
Exactly. And that's how. So, you know what? Plan for it. How many, when luck happens, that means you didn't plan, right? How about you plan your luck? Plan your luck. You say, okay, so I had everything out. Who's going to be the troublemaker patient? It's going to take some time. Who's going to be the quick patients? Who can I move around? I said, you know what I had? I brought my proven egg by Rich Gaspari protein can into the office in 2 shakers, filled them with filtered water, mixed them up, boom, put them right there. Because that's what I was sipping on in between patients. I'm like, I could sip water, I could do coffee, that probably make me tired. Let me just sip on pure protein. Guess what? It worked. Whoa. And you know what? End of the day, I was like, I feel good. I got home and I'm like, I feel great. And I actually I had 2 conversations, one about college with the 17-year-old and one about college with a 16-year-old. And I watched a TV show and I'm like, oh, let's watch this murder mystery. I was like exhausted, but I'm like, I felt good. It's an accomplishment. So 1, a purpose. And when you have a purpose, you have to plan. You plan before. And then, ready for this? Review. End of the day is the review. Review what you did. Oh, I did so good. Because what happens to most of us? We do doom scrolling, right? We get on our phones. Oh, that's negative. I want to read that. Oh, that's horrible. Doom scrolling. We do that with the news, right? Boom, boom. Oh, let me watch this. 3 people murdered today. Yeah, but there was 30 little babies that were born, right? I think that's more important.
What do you focus on?
It's what you focus on. So review your day and ready for this. What did I win at? What was more neutral, a tie? And how can I improve it? And what did I lose? Okay. What shots in the goal did I miss? Well, I won the game today, but you know what? I think I can get my hand down there a little quicker when I see that player coming to me. All right, I can improve this. And I look back and said, I did real well. What could I have done better today? And I'm thinking, oh, I could have changed the music I was playing. We actually did. We played some music, but I had some low energy jazz on. And I'm like, which I like to listen to relax. I should have had more up-tempo music going for me and the patients to get them moving quicker too. So plan your day. Make sure you're prepared for your day. They don't give NFL stars beer during the game. They drink Gatorade or water, right? So during intra workout, we call it. During work, how are you fueling yourself? How are you thinking? What environment? What music? And then end of the day, review. I did this right. I'm going to do this, change this next time. And then guess what? Next day, rinse and repeat. So planning is important. Ready for this? Sleep is important. Rest. So how do you rest? Most people, like you say, I work hard enough. I can go to sleep in 2 minutes. Boom. I put my head on the pillow. I'm out because I leave it on the floor. The dance room floor. I leave it on the field. Frank Wright versus the Houston Oilers. He's never had a better game, right? Ever. Now, there's a lot of players that have played more and done more, but of one pro quarterback, you can say that was his best game ever. And we have it recorded, and we can watch it. And you can play a full game.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Exactly. So yeah, what I think what you're driving at is good, to have a series of simple things, to be able to visualize, to plan, to
review
and make sure you're not just reviewing the negative parts of the day. You're reviewing the positives, celebrate the victories.
Yes.
Collect some data from the failures and think, okay, well, that didn't go right. Let's take a look at how we can make that better.
Yeah.
And then obviously get enough sleep and have the right nutrients in your body. All those things are, in a sense, they are neural hacks.
Yes.
Because a visualization to me is a neural hack.
Absolutely.
Right? Because you're creating your environment.
And I got some big burly blue collar truck drivers. Like I say, I need you to visualize. They'd be like, oh, what's that? And I said, hey, I want you to get up a little earlier. I already have to get up early. No, get up earlier, have a cup of coffee, sit down in your house when it's quiet and think, I got to think of the stops I have to go to. Okay. Think about them. Yep. But can I short circuit it? Oh, can I, instead of stopping at the truck stop, can I make some better food or stop at a better restaurant? No one's going to care if a big 18-wheeler pulls up to the organic restaurant, It's going to look weird as Bubba gets out, but I think it's great. See, eat some more food. Because I'll tell them and say, hey, would you ever put low quality diesel in this truck? No way. I own my truck. I own it. I still got to pay for it.
Right.
I'm like, oh, no, put junk in it. put the worst oil, the worst diesel fuel, the worst transmission, the cheapest stuff you can. Fred, what are you saying? You're getting me mad. Oh, really? I'm getting you mad? How does that make sense?
Well,
I'm
like I
getting you
said
mad?
earlier,
Why do you do it to yourself?
like I said earlier, that Mike Mutzel, who I enjoy his podcasts, High Intensity Health, they're called. I suggest people go and watch those. And one of the things he says is he has T-shirts that say, "Eat like your life depends on it. Work out like your life depends on it." And you think, well, okay, well, yeah, because it does. It
It
absolutely does.
does. And I'm going to go farther for this. And maybe we need this. That's just survival. Forget survival. I like thriving. I
Mhm.
mean, all through the pandemic, I always put, yep, still thriving, still thriving. I would keep putting memes out. I'm still
Right.
thriving. You
Yeah.
know, in the winter of disease and death, I'm still thriving.
Mhm.
Just so people would say, okay, Fred, how are you thriving? Working out? All the gyms are closed. We grab the equipment, put them in friend's basement. I drive an hour one way just to work out in this basement and drive back. How did you find that time? I get up earlier, go to bed later. I find a way to do it,
Mhm.
so we could work out. I'm still thriving. So instead of just eating to survive, ready for this? Eating to lose weight, eating to be a little healthier, eat to thrive, eat to be the best human being you can be. There's a guy named Tom Brady,
Mhm.
and everyone thinks he's an outlier. Uh-uh. He's just following the rules
Yeah, closely.
closely.
Mhm.
Yep.
No
And if we all followed the rules, how much better would your marriages be,
Mhm.
your work environment be, your parenting, if you have siblings, your family life?
Yep.
How much better would it be? How much happier would you be if you're following the rules instead of going against them?
Yeah, exactly. That's so true, Fred. Hey, I appreciate everything today.
Okay.
Nice distance here. We're going to put this thing together.
Okay.
We definitely got 3 or 4 more topics to cover on future podcasts, which always happens when we talk, which
Oh
is
yeah.
awesome. So, yeah, so people, hack your neurology. Just listen to Dr. Fred. Listen to me. Well, I think we know what we're doing here, and we're living examples of how to go about your day, how to get the basic premise of being truly healthy and vital, and like not just surviving but thriving. I think we're both examples of that. Surviving's great. People are at that level, but and get up there, and then realize, okay, like you said, shoot for the stars. You might hit the moon, right? Shoot for
Yeah.
Pluto. You'll end up on Mars. You got to set big goals, and I think visualizing, planning, write down your goals, and make them with people you respect who are also in that category. If Fred and I sat down and did goal setting, it would be pretty monstrous. Maybe we'll do that. Maybe we'll do that live on air. Wouldn't that be fun?
We,
Maybe we'll
we
do
should
like
do something like that.
a goal setting
You
work
you know where the best views are? You're a big mountain climber. Where's the best views?
at the top. Exactly.
Why would you shoot? You know what? There's Mike and Mike trying to climb a mountain. Let's just stop. It's been a couple hours. Let's just stop.
Yeah.
This view is good enough.
Well, there's people that stop at 13,000 feet when the
Yeah.
mountain's 14,000. And I
Yeah.
get it. They've told themselves a story that
Yes.
this is all I can do.
Yes.
And, you listen to some people that have achieved great things, and they'll say, as soon as you feel like you can't do anymore, you're 40% exhausted. That's it.
Yes.
The first time you say, I can't do it anymore. And I've said that on mountains. I've said it, and the guy I go with just laughs, and we take a few breaths. We start talking about something else, and then we start going back up the mountain. It's just like I had to get it off my chest. Like, in other words, this is hard. I'm
Yeah.
struggling. And he's like, yeah, me too. All right, let's just take a breather here. Check
Yeah.
out those birds. Check out that. Look, we're at tree line now.
I
There's
truly.
there's a little pica. There's a marmot. Look at the animals. Maybe we'll see a mountain goat. All right, and then we don't even talk about we better get going. We're like, start walking up the hill again, and
Yeah.
then we get that same feeling again. We might stop again, take a breather, but deep inside, we know we're getting to the top. I don't care. I mean, I'm going to the top. I'll tape up the blisters if I have to, and just take deeper breaths because I didn't fly to Colorado to go halfway up a mountain. It's not happening. And I trained for it, and I'm nutrified. I'm mineralized. I have a plan. I carry it out, and we do it. It's something that fits, like you say. You can't pole vault. I can't pick up a 600-pound rock and roll it down a hill. But I can explore things and hike till the cows come home. I could walk to China probably. So
I'm going to leave you with two quotes, and
excellent.
then I'll let you end it here.
I love it.
Arnold Schwarzenegger, when he changed the whole fitness game and bodybuilding, and now weights are okay. He did that through the power of his personality. Whether you like him, hate him, have no opinion at all. But a man came up to him once and said, "Ooh, look at those big, gross muscles. I would never want to look like that." And then he turned to him and said, "Don't worry, you won't."
Exactly.
Meaning you don't have the drive, you don't have the discipline to do what it takes to thrive.
Yeah.
And then there's my football coach, Coach Fino. I don't know if you know he's still alive, but Coach Fino used to say stuff, and you've heard this before too in sports. But you get a hard hit, you get dinged up in the game, your knees hurting your back, I had broken fingers as a lineman. He goes, "Clary, you hurting? Yeah. You know what's the best killer, Clary? No, sir. What is it? Winning."
Yeah, that's for sure. 100%. 100%. Anything
You never hear the winners complain about how much work it took to get to the top of the mountain. Ever.
Too happy. Yeah. Anything that hurts on the way up the mountain doesn't hurt coming down the mountain.
Why is that?
You're too thrilled.
You're too thrilled. It's neurology.
Your biochemistry is just celebrating.
So why don't we celebrate every day?
Yeah.
Good. No reason to. Review your day and find those top. You hit some mountaintops. Everyone listening or watching has hit some mountaintops, even if it's just cleaning your house, or I did the dishes and I didn't have time to, or I gave my teenager a hug and they didn't want it. What win did you get today?
Yeah.
Celebrate that, because you know what happens when you get wins on top of wins and wins? You become the champion.
Mm-hmm.
Takes a lot of W's to be a champion, but you can start today.
Good summary, Fred. Good summary. It was awesome having you on the show as always.
Yep.
Everybody that likes these, please give them a thumbs up. Share them with people. Share them with people that are down in the luck, feeling bad. Anybody who's sick. That's what this is for. This isn't for anything else but to raise people up and get people to be healthier and get them off of drugs and get them on the right path. That's what we're about. You can always, put things in the comments for us because we want to hear what you liked, what you didn't like. If we offended somebody, I want to hear about it because I'll talk all day to make you understand how that I wasn't meant to offend, but I was meant to change and to motivate and to move people in the right direction. And I know Fred's the same way. He doesn't want to hurt anybody, but sometimes in the path of growth, there's a little bit of pain. So that's just how it is. All right, Fred. Hey, have a good day. We will talk soon. I think we should do that goal setting workshop. That's what I like.
Oh, that'll be perfect. Oh, yeah. That'll blow people's minds. All right. Have a good week.
Brother. Good seeing you. You too. Take it easy.